I was the heir to a fortune, yet my own sister butchered me and left me to rot in a basement, only to find myself reborn on the very day my identity was stolen. The world once saw me as an easy target, a man so naive that even Alex Cooper, dripping in $1 million of designer luxury while kneeling in fake despair, had the audacity to beg for my help. In my previous life, I fell for his lies and personally welcomed him into the Stevens family, essentially handing him the ladder to climb over my own corpse. This time, as I stare at his nauseatingly fake expression, I wonder if he can keep up the act once he realizes I am alive and remember the sting of every single cut. On the night of that infamous birthday gala, Olivia Stevens and Jessica Taylor lured me into drinking drugged wine before dragging me to the basement to end my life. That was the same day Alex Cooper, the man who had half of Hollywood swooning, successfully orchestrated his return to the Stevens family to usurp my rightful place. Even as the life was tortured out of me, my eyes refused to shut. When I finally drifted back to consciousness and realized I was lying in my own bedroom, the truth hit me like a physical blow. I'd been reborn. It was the exact same day Alex Cooper was scheduled to be formally welcomed back into the family fold to reclaim his supposed heritage. Now, it is my turn to teach them a lesson they will never forget. If I had the grit to drag the Stevens family back from the brink of bankruptcy in just 3 years, then they should have known my methods were never going to be kind or conventional. I can still see it vividly. My sister Olivia Stevens standing over me, eyes cold, as she carved the flesh from my chest one agonizing slice at a time. They ripped my tongue out so I could no longer scream for mercy. They hacked off my limbs until I was nothing but a torso, utterly incapable of fighting back. I died in a whirlwind of agonizing physical pain and a hatred so deep it transcended death, drowning in total despair. Even in death, my eyes remained wide. The moment I realized I was back in my bed, my first instinct was to reach down and feel my arms and legs. They were whole and unharmed. I was truly back. The clock had been reset by a full year, returning me to the very morning Alex Cooper first set foot in this house. The memory of that bone-deep agony is something I can never truly erase. I clutch my head, desperately trying to banish the horrific images of the basement from my mind. Suddenly, the bedroom door swung open and someone rushed to my side, helping me sit up while speaking in a deceptively sweet voice. "Lucas, I told you not to overdo it with the drinks last night. Is your head pounding? Let me go get you something for that hangover." Her voice was laced with feigned concern, but it only sent a freezing shiver down my spine. Looking at that familiar face made my skin crawl and the hair on my arms stand on end. It was her, Olivia Stevens, my own flesh and blood. During the darkest years of the Stevens family, she was the one I clung to for survival. Yet she was also the monster who would eventually carve me into pieces. She slipped out for a moment and returned shortly with a bowl of what she claimed was hangover soup. "Here you go, Lucas. Let your big sister feed you." "I'm fine," I snapped, cutting her off and pushing the bowl away. I didn't give her a chance to respond before calling out, "Have the butler bring my suit." Once I had dressed in my usual bespoke tailoring, I stood before the full-length mirror and stared at my reflection. The eyes looking back at me were frigid, stripped of all warmth, and unreadable to anyone watching. At that moment, my butler, William, stepped into the room. "Lucas, Mr. Alex Cooper has arrived," he announced. Alex Cooper was the man who had stolen my life, the imposter who had been welcomed into this house as a surrogate son while I was missing. As he grew older, his lack of any family resemblance sparked my parents' suspicions, leading them on an exhaustive search that eventually brought me home. Despite the truth, my parents had developed a deep bond with Alex and couldn't bring themselves to cast him out. However, the moment Alex discovered his own biological parents were wealthy, he abandoned us without a second thought. To make matters worse, he personally orchestrated the bankruptcy of the Stevens family, a devastating blow that broke my parents' spirits and led to their untimely deaths. I had to rebuild everything from the ground up, eventually transforming the Summit Group into an empire far greater than it had ever been. Yet here he was, having the nerve to show his face on my doorstep once again. Alex Cooper was perched on the sofa in the living room, but he practically leaped to his feet the moment I entered. His tall frame was trembling violently, acting as though my mere presence had terrified him to his core. I took a seat across from him, noticing Olivia Stevens watching him out of the corner of my eye with an expression that sat somewhere between pity and a poorly concealed delight. "Lucas," he began, his voice small and tentative, "I really want to come home. The Coopers never accepted me as one of their own, and all I want is to be back with Olivia." He was being incredibly careful with his words, projecting the image of a broken, submissive man who just wanted to belong. The butler immediately chimed in. "Mr. Stevens, Alex did grow up within these walls, and your father always held him in high regard. Surely you can find it in your heart to let him stay. With your current success, supporting Alex is a drop in the bucket, and he seems so genuinely sorry. Please let him stay." William watched me closely, waiting for my final word on matter. "That is a nice suit," I remarked coolly, my eyes drifting over Alex from head to toe. My tone was entirely neutral, betraying nothing of what I was actually thinking. Alex immediately looked down at his shoes, his composure beginning to crumble into stutters. William narrowed his eyes, sensing that something was off. The outfit Alex was wearing was a bespoke piece from an elite international designer, a level of luxury rarely seen even in our circles. In my previous life, I was too ignorant to recognize the brand and assumed he was wearing rags, allowing his pathetic appearance to completely deceive me. Back then, William had been adamant that we shouldn't take in an outsider. However, Olivia fought me every step of the way, claiming that looking after Alex was our parents' dying wish. Even Jessica Taylor showed up to weigh in, telling me that being charitable would look great for my public image and that everyone would admire my kindness. I allowed them to put me on a pedestal until I lost all sense of reality. Consequently, Alex Cooper moved back into the Stevens estate with ease. Looking back at it now, I want to punch my past self for being so incredibly naive. But in this life, I am not just going to yell at that ungrateful rat. I want to feel his bones break under my fists. I leaned forward and locked eyes with him. "That suit you are wearing is from a boutique that makes Louis Vuitton look like a bargain bin. If I am not mistaken, that entire ensemble costs north of $1 million. I must be out of the loop. Is that how the Coopers kick people out these days? They throw you on the street, but make sure you are draped in $1 million worth of fabric? They must be even richer than I thought." The room was suddenly filled with a low hum of servants whispering to one another. "Wait, $1 million for one suit? How was that even possible? I can't even imagine that much money. If he is broke, why is he dressed like a king? Maybe it is a knockoff. I thought our boss was loaded, but this makes us look like amateurs. Do the Coopers have gold-plated toilets or something?" Alex shot me a guilty look, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were brimming with fake tears. "Lucas, I don't know what you were talking about. I don't understand. This is just something I picked up at a regular department store. It's not expensive at all. It probably just resembles those high-end brands. I'm truly desperate this time. Please, believe me, I'm not here for the Summit Group. I just want a roof over my head, so I can be near where our parents are buried." I couldn't stand the sound of his voice and turned my head away in disgust. Seeing my reaction, Alex's posture slumped as if I had physically struck him, and he went back to staring at the floor like a wounded puppy. "William, did he arrive here by himself?" "Yes, I'm alone. I walked the entire way here, and my feet are covered in blisters," Alex blurted out before the butler could even open his mouth. William hesitated, likely because the history between us was so complicated and fraught with tension. On one hand, there was a lingering sense of guilt regarding my parents, and on the other, Olivia and Jessica were always whispering in my ear about how much my parents supposedly adored Alex. To honor their memory, I had kept a line of communication open with him for far longer than he deserved. "William, I had the security team pull the surveillance footage around the Hampton estate from the last few months. Every single time Alex left that property, he was being picked up in either a Rolls-Royce Dawn or Pagani Huayra. His frequent haunts are exclusive clubs where the cover charge alone is 6 figures, not to mention the high-end lounges he frequents. In fact, a limited edition Lamborghini Veneno dropped him off just down the road only minutes ago. The older footage was wiped because my father always insisted that Alex was incapable of lying, and we were all foolish enough to believe him. I certainly didn't question it at the time. The room erupted into a frenzy of shocked chatter. Unbelievable. Who gets chauffeured in a hypercar after being kicked out on the street? Just how much money does that family have? He is lying right to the boss's face. It finally clicked for everyone in the room. Alex Cooper was a fraud. I let a sharp, mocking smile play on my lips. William, misinterpreting my silence as a sign of weakness, let out a heavy sigh of disappointment. But then I spoke up, my voice cutting through the noise. William, contact the press immediately. Tell them we're holding a briefing. We're going to tell the world how the Coopers abandoned poor Alex, and that we intend to seek justice on his behalf. My voice was steady, but the words hit the room like a bomb. Everyone froze in place, and Alex's jaw practically hit the floor. He had never been shut down by me so decisively. Even William stood paralyzed for a moment before a spark of realization lit up his eyes, and he began to look at me with newfound respect. William was the quintessential professional, his loyalty tied strictly to my father's dictates. He followed orders to the letter, never letting personal feelings cloud his judgment. Perhaps I had been such a disappointment in the past that seeing me take charge like this made his reaction seem almost dramatic. After the initial shock wore off, Alex hit the floor with a heavy thud, dropping to his knees. "Lucas, please," he sobbed, reaching for my hand. "I have nowhere else to go. You have always been so kind, and you have everything. Why can't you just help me one more time? I grew up in this house, just like you did. Lucas, please, just a few days. I'll find a new place and be out of your hair before you know it. I won't be any trouble. Brother?" I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. "Who exactly are you calling brother? My name is Stevens, and yours is Cooper. We aren't related by blood or anything else, so watch how you address me. Jack Johnson, get this man out of my sight. If he stays here making a scene, the Coopers might get the wrong idea and think I'm being unfair to their precious son." Jack Johnson, our head of security, marched into the room with his team, his presence easily eclipsing Alex's. He grabbed Alex by the scruff of his neck, and despite Alex's height, he looked completely helpless. He was dragged across the floor like a stray dog being removed from a private club. Just as they reached the exit, Olivia Stevens lunged forward, kicking Jack in the shins to make him let go. She threw her arms around Alex, her face wet with tears of performative grief. She looked up at me, her eyes burning with rage. "Lucas, have you no heart? Have you already forgotten our parents' final words to you? They told you to look after Alex. You're always preaching about family loyalty and respect, yet here you are spitting on their dying wishes. You are cold, Lucas." I didn't let her words get to me. Instead, I let out a sharp laugh and looked directly at Olivia. "The way you're defending him, Olivia, anyone would think you two were the ones who shared a mother, not us. So where does that leave me? If you're so devoted to him, why don't you both pack your bags and get the hell out of this house together?" Olivia's face went pale, her expression one of utter disbelief. It had clearly never crossed her mind that I would ever threaten to exile her from the family. "Lucas Stevens, how dare you? Have you lost all respect for your elder sister? I said you're out, Olivia. Was I not clear? Or do I need to call the press back and make a formal announcement that you are no longer a part of this family? Furthermore, I am the CEO of the Summit Group. In this house and in the business world, I am the authority. So tell me, who is really failing to show respect here? And by what right do you think you can address me so casually?" Olivia stared at me, frozen, as the realization finally dawned on her that I was deadly serious. The shock in her eyes curdled into pure, unadulterated malice. She looked like she wanted to rip my throat out, but I couldn't have cared less. I turned to William. "I've kept certain secrets to protect people's dignity, but my patience has run out. If you want to leave with even a shred of your reputation intact, Olivia, you'll walk out that door right now." A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the sound of Olivia's ragged, trembling breaths. She stood there, teeth clenched, while Alex continued his pathetic whimpering beside her. The servants who had been gossiping moments ago were now deathly silent, terrified that even a single peep would result in them being thrown out onto the street alongside her. To them, I was now a monster, a man cold enough to cast out his own sister without a second thought. William, have Olivia and Alex removed from the premises immediately. I don't want them tracked on my floors a second longer. Understood, sir, William replied. With a sharp nod from William, Jack Johnson and his team closed in. Alex, despite his size, immediately tried to hide behind Olivia's smaller frame. She threw her arms out, acting as a human shield, and began screaming at the security guards to stay back. I dare any of you to lay a hand on him. You'll all be fired before the sun sets. Olivia shrieked. The guards hesitated, looking between her and me for direction. I let out a dry, cold laugh. He's nothing but a stray, Olivia. And honestly, you're getting a little too comfortable acting like you're the queen of this manor. Olivia lost it. Lucas Stevens, how dare you? Are you calling me a bastard? I may not run the company, but I am our father's daughter. If our parents could hear you now, they would be turning in their graves at your insolence. Her face was crimson, and she was shaking with pure rage. Behind us, the staff began to murmur again. Is he taking this too far? One whispered. I've been here since she was a baby. If she wasn't their daughter, why would the master have raised her as his own? They doted on her. To call her a bastard now is just cruel. I expected more from him. Hearing the servants take her side, Olivia stood a little taller. She pointed a trembling finger at me and demanded an explanation in front of everyone. I see right through you, Lucas. You're making up these disgusting lies just so you can keep the entire Stevens inheritance for yourself. Do you think everyone here is an idiot? Her accusation was so absurd, I actually felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. Oh, there were plenty of blind people in the room, clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking about watching her grow up without noticing she looks nothing like her parents. I turned my gaze toward one of the nannies, the one who was always the most vocal about having been there since Olivia's birth. She looked away guiltily when our eyes met. I gave her a thin, cold smile. You've been here since the beginning, haven't you? Tell me, in all those years, did it never occur to you that Olivia looks absolutely nothing like my father? Or my mother, for that matter? The nanny paused, her eyes drifting toward Olivia as if seeing her for the first time. Wait, the nanny whispered, her voice barely audible. Now that you mention it, she really doesn't resemble them at all. As soon as the words were out, the other staff members began to nod in agreement. You're right, she doesn't, another added. Her eyes are shaped differently, and her profile is all wrong, one remarked. Both the master and mistress had very prominent features, and her complexion is different too. She doesn't have the mistress's elegance or the master's stature. It's like she belongs to a different family entirely. They continued to dissect her appearance, their eyes traveling over her with a clinical, almost mocking curiosity. Olivia's face went from red to a deep, embarrassed purple. Lucas Stevens, what is the meaning of this charade? She spat. If you're going to claim I'm not their daughter, you'd better have proof. Don't think for a second that your fancy title gives you the right to bully the staff into supporting your lies just to get rid of me. I nodded, a slow smile spreading across my face. You're absolutely right, Olivia. I would never make such a serious accusation without the paperwork to back it up. I have the original DNA tests right here, including the ones I took with our parents when I returned. If you're so confident, why don't we schedule a fresh test for you today? Olivia stood her ground, her voice trembling but defiant. Fine, let's do it. I have nothing to hide. That won't be necessary, William interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension. William looked at Olivia with a gaze so cold it was practically skeletal. There is no need for further testing. I know the truth. Olivia Stevens is not the biological daughter of the late Mr. and Mrs. Stevens. She is the daughter of a woman who used to work here as a maid. A collective gasp echoed through the grand foyer. Wow, I guess the old man had a wandering eye, someone whispered. William's expression darkened. It's not what you think. Let me finish. He cleared his throat, his voice taking on a formal, storytelling tone. The maid in question was a very manipulative woman who was obsessed with the family fortune. While Mrs. Stevens was away visiting family, the maid tried to slip into the master's bed. However, she got the rooms mixed up. One of my father's old army friends was staying the night, and in her haste, she didn't realize she was with the wrong man. She didn't come forward until she was 8 months pregnant, and the ensuing scandal nearly destroyed my parents' marriage. It wasn't until the DNA test was performed after the birth that the maid realized her mistake. Overcome with shame and realizing her plan had failed, she abandoned the infant and disappeared in the middle of the night. My father's friend was a married man who refused to acknowledge the child, so my parents, in an act of staggering generosity, decided to raise the girl as their own. William turned his gaze back to Olivia, who was now as white as a ghost. "Do you understand now, Olivia?" Her knees buckled as she collapsed onto the floor in a heap. It took several minutes before she could find the strength to stand, and when she did, she began to stumble toward the exit without saying a word. At the same time, Jack and his team unceremoniously tossed Alex Cooper out onto the driveway. As I watched their retreating figures fade into the distance, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was, I had known for a long time that Olivia wasn't my biological sister. On his deathbed, my father had pulled me close and whispered the whole sordid story. He begged me to take care of Olivia and keep the secret. They had spent her entire life shielding her from the truth, and William had been sworn to secrecy. Despite the lack of a blood connection, we had been closer than most real siblings. But I never could have imagined that she would be capable of murdering me, knowing full well I was the only true Stevens heir. After what she did to me in the basement, any familial love I had for her had died. Later that afternoon, while I was enjoying a quiet lunch of Kobe beef and a bottle of 82 Lafite, Jessica Taylor made her grand entrance. She didn't even wait to be announced before her shrill, condescending voice filled the room. "Lucas Stevens, what on earth is this drama I'm hearing about?" she demanded, sashaying toward the table with an exaggerated sway of her hips. Before she even reached me, the overpowering scent of her perfume drowned out the aroma of my meal, ruining the experience entirely. I let out a sharp, mocking breath. If she were truly so concerned for her childhood sweetheart, she would have been here hours ago. When I didn't acknowledge her, Jessica took a seat next to me, crossing her long legs with an air of entitlement. She took a warm towel from a maid, meticulously cleaning her hands before gesturing for someone to bring her a glass. Her manicured fingers were draped in enough diamonds to be distracting. I used to be obsessed with her, convinced she was the pinnacle of womanhood. It was only after coming back from the dead that I realized my affection was just a self-imposed filter that blinded me to her obvious flaws. Now that the illusion has shattered, everything about her irritates me. I am no longer the pathetic lapdog who lived for her attention. I have finally woken up. She reached for the decanter, pouring herself a generous glass before moving to refill mine. I didn't say a word, simply sliding my glass out of her reach. Jessica's hand froze in midair, and she stared at me in confusion for a long moment. "Oh, so we're still playing the angry boyfriend game? You're being very difficult today, Lucas. I assume you're here to lobby for Alex Cooper?" I said. Jessica took a slow, theatrical sip of the wine, closing her eyes as if she were a world-class sommelier. The vintage is exquisite. Bold, full-bodied, with such a complex finish. The bouquet is simply divine. Her rehearsed, pretentious commentary was almost comical. It was hard to believe this woman was considered an A-list star, when in reality, she was nothing more than a glorified social climber. If I hadn't taken an interest in her and poured millions into her career when she was just a struggling influencer, she wouldn't even be invited to these kinds of parties. "Alex is practically family," she began, setting her glass down. "He spent his entire life in this house, and we grew up together. I know his heart, Lucas, and he's a good man. I even heard your father wanted to see him one last time before he passed. How can you be so incredibly cold?" I listened to her rambling and felt a surge of pure disgust. If I hadn't lived through my previous life, I never would have guessed that she had been in love with Alex the entire time. Back then, when Alex was the heir apparent to the Stevens fortune, she was nowhere near his social circle. She only settled for me after he left for the Cooper family. Now that Alex has been cast aside by them, she's ready to burn the world down just to get back in his good graces. Is that right? I asked with a pleasant, hollow smile. Maybe I should just hand him the keys to the company too? Would that satisfy your sense of justice? I kept my expression carefully blank, though my eyes were like ice. Jessica, ever the narcissist, assumed I was still under her spell and took my sarcasm as a genuine offer. "Oh, that won't be necessary," she said, waving her hand as if she were doing me a favor. "What you need to do is go to his hotel and personally invite him back. Then book the most exclusive restaurant in the city for a welcome home gala. Finally, you'll call a press conference to announce that Alex is the new executive vice president of the Summit Group. I know it's hard for you, considering he lived your life for a decade, but it's the right thing to do. You've had your little tantrum, and that's fine. But let's not make this harder than it needs to be. It's embarrassing for everyone." I remained silent, watching her with that same empty smile. She took my silence as agreement and kept going. "I know I haven't been around much lately, but my schedule is packed. Don't take it personally. Being a celebrity is demanding, and you need to learn to be more supportive instead of moping around. It's honestly a bit pathetic when a man acts this needy. Also, you might see some headlines about me and a few co-stars soon. It's just PR, Lucas. Don't be sensitive about it. I've never officially gone public with our relationship, but you know you're always my number one," she added, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Even William and Jack were visibly annoyed by her arrogance. They still believed I was the same desperate man who would tolerate any insult just to stay in her good graces. In the past, I would have treated her insults as cute quirks. Now, I found myself doubled over in laughter, my shoulders shaking with the sheer absurdity of it all. Jessica stared at me, completely bewildered. "Lucas? What is so funny? Did I miss the joke?" I waved her off, gasping for air. No, it's just, you are hysterical." "Jessica, have you actually lost your mind? Who do you think you're talking to? Every meal you eat, every drop of wine in that glass, and every single thread of clothing on your body was paid for by me. Even your underwear was bought with my credit card. And yet, here you are, trying to lecture me on how to run my life?" Jessica went rigid, her mouth hanging open in shock. I stood up and grabbed her by the chin, looking closely at the surgical scars from her various procedures. "I paid to build you from the ground up, Jessica. To me, you aren't a star. You're just a product I purchased. A product should know its place. Be quiet and do what you're told. If you play your cards right, maybe I'll buy you some more lingerie. But don't you ever think you have a say in my business? You really think you're a celebrity? Use that brain of yours, the one currently drowning in Botox, and remember exactly who made you relevant." Jessica's face drained of color, her perfect features twisting into a mask of pure panic. She had clearly forgotten. She forgot who paid for the PR team that branded her as a classy, educated actress from a wealthy family. She forgot who flooded the media with paid reviews until everyone was convinced she actually had talent. She forgot who spent millions on crisis management every time she got caught in a scandal or a messy affair. She had somehow convinced herself that her success was the result of her own hard work. What a joke. I had said enough. I turned my back on her and started to walk away. Jessica scrambled to get in front of me. "Lucas, wait. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it," she stammered. She had spent so long being worshipped that she had completely forgotten how to beg. It was funny, really. She never had any trouble playing the submissive role when she was trying to land a more famous actor. The sound of the slap echoed through the room like a gunshot, followed immediately by Jessica's high-pitched scream. Her heels caught on the rug, and she went sprawling onto the floor, any shred of her celebrity poise vanishing instantly. "Lucas, did you just hit me?" she shrieked, clutching her face. She stared up at me, her eyes wide with shock. I looked down at her, as if she were a piece of trash. "Get out of my house, Jessica. As of this second, you are cut off. You're on your own." She scrambled to her feet and lunged at me, her nails digging into my arm. "Lucas, please. I'm sorry. I was out line, I was just stressed. Please, just give me one more chance. I looked down at my arm, where her diamond-encrusted nails were breaking the skin. Jack, I called out. I'm here, sir, he replied, stepping forward immediately. Her nails are a bit too long, I said, my voice eerily calm. Remove them. I'd hate for her to accidentally scratch someone else. Consider it done, sir, Jack replied. He gave a quick signal, and several guards swarmed her before she could even react. Jessica's screams reached a fever pitch. No, stop. These are real. They aren't acrylics. The guards didn't hesitate, following my orders to the letter. Amidst her gut-wrenching wails, Jessica collapsed to the floor, her hands a bloody mess. She looked like a ghost, her eyes glazed over with a mix of shock and total despair. The pain was so intense that her face was barely recognizable. Lucas, how could you? She sobbed, her voice breaking. I was only trying to help you. I just wanted what was best for the family. Even with her face streaked with tears, she tried to maintain her victim look. I stepped forward and pressed the sole of my shoe firmly against her cheek. A rush of pure, vindictive adrenaline flooded my system, and for a moment, I actually trembled with the thrill of it. But this was only the beginning. Compared to the months of torture I endured, this was a minor inconvenience for her. Jessica Taylor, or should I use your real name? Jessica? You were so bold when you were calling me by my full name earlier. Why the sudden change to Lucas? We aren't that close anymore. Your acting in this room is even worse than your performances on screen. I spent a fortune trying to scrub your reputation clean, but you're still nothing but a magnet for scandal. Every actor in town avoids you like the plague. If no one else in Hollywood wants you, why on earth would I? You are a worthless investment. Jessica stared up at me, her eyes glazed with disbelief. Lucas, you're just angry, right? You said you'd love me forever. You promised. I laughed again, a harsh, dry sound. It was true. I had once loved her with a passion that bordered on insanity. And look where that love got me. Letting her walk out of this house with her life is the greatest act of charity I will ever perform. Get her out of here, I ordered William. Take plenty of photos of her in this state and send them to the tabloids. Tell them they can have the exclusive. Of course, sir, he replied. William moved quickly, as if afraid I might change my mind if he waited too long. He watched me walk away with a look of genuine pride and relief. Olivia didn't return to the estate that night. I knew exactly where she had gone. I arrived at a certain budget hotel early the next morning. The manager's jaw dropped when he saw me standing in his lobby. A man of my standing was never seen in a place this cheap and unremarkable. Even the smallest, most insignificant property I had allowed Olivia to manage was worth 10 times this entire building. My father hadn't left her a single cent in his will. I was the one who had given her a job and assets to manage, purely out of a misplaced sense of brotherly duty. I never expected she would throw away our entire history for a man who didn't even care about her. Once the manager realized who I was, he went into a frantic state of sycophancy, bowing and scraping while barking orders at his staff to treat me like royalty. Within seconds, I was surrounded by a dozen young, attractive hostesses, all of them eager to cater to my every whim. Looking at their bright, hopeful faces, I realized just how much of my life I had wasted. I had spent years being a lapdog for Jessica Taylor, sacrificing my own dignity for a woman who never loved me. She had built her entire career on the image of a strong, independent woman who didn't need a man, all while using my money to fund her lifestyle. She would flirt with every leading man in Hollywood for a headline, completely ignoring the man who was actually paying for her fame. That version of me is dead. I am a Stevens, and I will be treated as such. Tell me where Alex Cooper is, I demanded. The manager hesitated, stammering for a moment before finally leading me upstairs to a specific room. Even through the closed door, Olivia's voice was unmistakable. I can't believe how cold he's become. After everything I've done for him and this family, he just tosses me aside. Don't worry, Alex. I have enough evidence of his ties to organized crime to bury him and his precious company. If I can't have the Summit Group, no one will. I'll burn it all to the ground. Alex seemed to be playing the voice of reason for once. Olivia, let's not be hasty. I'd steal his life for years. It's only natural that he's angry. There are better ways to get back at him without destroying everything, Alex added. I gave Jack a subtle nod, and he sent the door flying open with a single kick. Well, this is an interesting conversation. Tell me, who exactly is the heartless one here? The two scrambled to pull the sheets up, but they weren't fast enough. It was obvious to everyone in the room that they were completely naked. Wait a second, one of the staff whispered. Weren't they supposed to be brother and sister? Why are they in bed together? She's willing to ruin her own brother for a guy who isn't even family? That's sick, another added. And I heard Alex is just some illegitimate kid the Coopers didn't even want. The second things got tough for the Stevens family, he was out the door. Now that he's broke and alone, he's back here trying to leech off them again. What a pathetic loser. The boss is way too nice. If it were me, I'd have left them on the street where they belong. You don't get to come back once the money starts flowing again. Olivia was shaking with humiliation, her eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. You're a monster, Lucas. Alex was more of a son to our parents than you ever were. They loved him. If it weren't for your DNA, you wouldn't have a single penny to your name. Blood relation? I chuckled and looked over at the hotel manager. Tell me, would you leave your entire life savings to a random stranger you found on the sidewalk? The manager laughed. Of course not, sir. I'm not an idiot. The room erupted in laughter at their expense. Olivia and Alex looked like they wanted to vanish into the floorboards. As I watched Olivia huddle under her towel, I felt a strange sense of emptiness, but no pity. I remember when I first came back. The family was in ruins, and the accounts were empty. I worked 3 jobs from delivering food to working the night shift in the warehouse to keep us afloat. I never complained once. Every cent I made went straight to her. I trusted her more than anyone. Keyword being trusted. I looked at Jack. Take the photos. Send them to every news outlet. I want this to be the front page story by tomorrow morning. And make sure the press knows the truth about Olivia's parentage. She's the daughter of a maid, and she has no right to the Stevens name. I wasn't even worried about the threats of exposing my crimes. With the power of the Summit Group behind me, I could crush her like an ant. Her evidence was meaningless. I walked out of the room as the flashbulbs began to pop behind me. Her screams of rage and Alex's desperate pleas for them to stop filming followed me down the hall. Once I was back in the car, I opened my phone to see the headlines already pouring. Starlet dropped by secret benefit. Jessica had spent years acting like she was untouchable, fueled by my blind devotion. She had been a nightmare to work with, bullying everyone on set and making life miserable for anyone she deemed below. From slapping co-stars to insulting directors, she had burned every bridge she ever had. Now that she was finally finished, no one was going to leave things. Within 2 weeks, the infection in her hand had turned to sepsis, and the doctors were forced to end it. She never made it off the operating table, dying from complications and blood loss during the procedure. I couldn't help but smile when I heard the news. People don't just die from a routine amputation unless someone wants them to. It was clear she had made one too many enemies, and someone had seized the opportunity to end her. But then, I received even better news. The photos from the hotel had gone viral, and Olivia and Alex were the talk of the internet for a week straight. The speculation about their twisted relationship was brutal. Weren't they raised as brother and sister? One popular comment read, "This is absolutely stomach-turning. They were probably sleeping together the whole time they lived in that house. She acts so innocent, and he looks like a tough guy, but he's just a common douche. And did you hear? Apparently, she's not even a real Stevens. Her mom was a maid who got knocked up by a house guest. Like mother, like daughter, I guess." The comments kept rolling in, a relentless avalanche of public shame. Not long after, the Cooper family released a formal statement stating that Alex was in no way related to them and was a complete fraud. They didn't hold back, calling him a con artist and a parasite. Olivia, unable to handle the public execution of her character, tried to end it all by jumping in the balcony. She survived the fall, but she would never be the same again. She suffered permanent brain damage and spent her days in a facility, wandering the halls and whispering, "I'm the Stevens heir. I'm the Elvis star. Eventually, she wandered away from the clinic and was never seen again, though rumors suggested she was living on the streets with her baby. Alex vanished shortly after Olivia disappeared. It wasn't until years later, during a meeting with a high-powered executive named Ms. Taylor, that I found out what happened to him. He had apparently ended up as a high-end escort for wealthy, older women, and his lifestyle finally caught up with him in a particularly gruesome way. The women involved had paid a small settlement to clear their names, and the world had simply moved on. I saw the indifference in Ms. Taylor's eyes and felt a grim sense of satisfaction. "Well, Ms. Taylor," I said, leaning back in my chair with a smile. "Now that we've cleared the air, I believe we have a deal to discuss. In this world of cold calculation, you may choose to be a good man, but you must first possess the power to annihilate the wicked. Never feel grateful to those who caused you pain. What kept you alive wasn't their cruelty. It was your own heart, tempered and hardened in the darkness of that basement."